going on next door between, you know, an unhappy couple. And it doesn't mean, you can still react to it, but it doesn't mean you're included in it.
Yeah. But you are if you're reacting, even if it's next door, because it's still having an effect.
Well, that's true, but maybe they wouldn't consider you as a participant.
But then they're considering you because there's a language happening that aren't words. But
well, I don't know.
I
don't know.
Yes, that's the important bit.
Exactly. This is exactly
That's the important bit.
Yeah.
And words can't always be put to it.
No, that's it.
Yeah, well,
like animals have a language and continue on their whole lives, a language in life and whatever, ants and whatever, but you don't hear them dialogue sounds speaking to each other. And
I mean, I think that one has to understand that art is not just visual, and visual art is not just visual anyway. It's much more complicated than that. It has to do with touch. It has to do with knowledge, and it's this immense, complicated constellation of the lot. I just, can I jump the gun because I've got to go, and then I'm going to leave you. I'll try not to kick anymore. I have come across this thought has occurred to me many times over my extensive career. I'm getting pretty old. And the thought that I have come across, which is interesting when you talk about metaphor that no artist has ever talked about, that art is actually a metaphor for life itself. And that therein lies art's importance. And how is it that, well, I have my limited wording view of this in that you live your life, you do what you do, you cannot change it. You have to make the best of whatever you've done. And that is also true of art. And that we were talking about that before when we were talking about making a mark and responding to it. Now, some people might say, well, in oil painting you can erase. No, you can't erase. You can't erase what's gone on your head or what you've seen in front of you. I think for me, this is where the importance of this is why art is so important to all of us.
So you're stopping at the first metaphor where it's a dialogue with the artists themselves.
Yeah, I don't believe that one personally. I think that's a load of crap.
Well, that's what
you know, I took it really nicely and politely.
Well, that's what you're saying. It's a metaphor.
Well, I am a lot
with
more. No, I'm not saying it's a dialogue with yourself. What I'm saying is it's a metaphor for life itself, which is quite different than being a dialogue with yourself. I don't like the word dialogue in relation to art. Dialogue is a word that is to do with the verbal language, not to do with the visual language. And I distinctly distrust that it's used. I know it's used constantly in modern art, but I distrust it.
But you just said visual language, and that's the same metaphor as dialogue.
Well, I disagree, probably, and I probably can't explain, but I would disagree.
Yeah, it's because language is the wrong word too. We haven't got a word for what it is. And what Christine said was about Whistler and Rembrandt. The very point was they didn't have to write about it. They were speaking through what they were actually doing.
Absolutely.
And the same with Rothko. And actually, some artists, like Scott, is very good at verbalising what he does because they've got that sort of brain. But most artists, I would say, if they have to write a statement, they should get someone else to do it.
I kind of agree.
Because it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair to expect someone who's really good at painting to also be good at explaining what it's about.
That's absolutely right. But I'm glad that they did it because I would have been able to study.
Christine and I have both done a doctorate, and we both understand what it is like to have to do the work and write about what you're doing at the same time.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And I have a really disgusting metaphor for that, which I'm not going to say. Do you want me to say?
Yeah,
it's like rolling up your own bum. You wanted to hear it? Okay? Because that what it felt like. And all I wanted to do was paint my paintings. Afterwards, I was prepared to write about them and think about them and see what they were. And I did. I was a complete rebel. I refused to write until I was really young. But to write about them while I was doing them was quite aside from the disgusting epithet. I'm sorry, Joe. That it was almost impossible to do. It was almost impossible to do authentically, to do in a way that meant something to me and that was going to mean something about what I was doing.
Yeah, and it comes across that several of these artists are very resentful of that writing. That's pretty clear. So.
And I'm very resentful too.
You have to do it. I don't know who it is, but I think it might have been you. Then you.
Go, Joe.
No, I'd just like to talk about the artist Ian Fairweather.
Okay, I don't know him, so yeah, tell me about him.
He's an alcoholic Scotsman that ended up sort of living on an island just wanted to
Why don't you do more than that? Identify with a Chinese scholar. He's brilliant.
As well as being a drunken Scotsman.
Isn't he talented? Oh my God.
So how are you going to There are two lots of Scotsmen and
Actually, I do know it. I do know him. He has a painting. He has a painting in the Queensland Gallery.
But he was a man of few words. You know, he didn't communicate a lot about his art, but he did it. He expressed it in his artwork. And one of the things that he did say when he was interviewed was, my work is about somewhere between representational and abstraction, and the other thing, whatever that is. So he was very quiet, and didn't, when he was interviewed, he didn't have a lot of words to speak. I mean, we've had a lot of words here tonight, but if you don't know Ian Fairweather, you should have a look at Ian Fairweather's work, and Murray Bale is one of the experts.
I think Nick Levy introduced me to him in the Queensland Art Gallery, and told me a little bit about Ian Fairweather when we were in the Queensland Art Gallery.
And if you do go to the Queensland Art Gallery,
that probably wasn't very complimentary.
I'm sure that
He told me he was a drunken Scotsman and then
sorry, I just want to get back to that for a minute.
Sorry, did you want to
made a very big mark in the international
If you
community.
do go to the Queensland Art Gallery, and there is a wall that is devoted to Ian Fairweather's work.
That's what I was remembering, yeah.
And one of the work is from the Tate Gallery inside the Queensland Art Gallery, and it's called Barley Raisins, and that's probably more realistic than abstract. So,
That's beautiful.
So the Queensland Gallery has got a wall. He used to use them as a ceiling, his floor, and everything else.
yeah.
Just like that.
You know him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
You choose next and then you.
I always had this thought. I always couldn't distinguish what is abstract painting and what is representational properly. So I decided something for myself. But it might not be right. But the thing is, to me, so many of the abstract painting, what Roscoe, as you mentioned, talk about human feelings and human conditions and human experiences much more than some of the representational paintings, which is all about how you need to put this paint, this color next to this color, and at the end it looks like a dead painting, and it looks like a dead body on a canvas. Even though it's from a human body, it looks like nothing.
There's no life to it.
Exactly. So to me, I decided that painting which has got something in relation with human and comes about some human experience in any way possible, even if it is visually totally abstract. I'll call it representational because it brings some sort of representational feeling that I experienced before at some point, or I know what it is about. And those ones that I call them abstract because I don't understand them. I don't understand why is it that that cold, dead man sitting on the couch, which doesn't look like anything, doesn't tell me anything, and there's so many that there is no.
That's a
there is
new
no.
view.
Yeah, there is no. If you look at some of the, there's so many of them at the moment. So many of the representational artists.
that are just
What they do is they just produce so many. They call it representational work. There is no choice making that's carried forward. I borrow it right now. There is no choice making, or there is nothing that you can say, oh, this person preferred that or wanted to say this. When you look at hundreds of works of him or her, that makes me think that's totally abstract. I don't get it. That's something. The other thing I wanted to say that was about what you were saying about that this word, the language, and all of this doesn't say what exactly visual art is. To me, it sounds that the whole it's a kind of like a fight between philosophers and artists, that they try to make sense of what we do, and they try to verbalize it somehow, and then we break it.
But this is even more cruel, because this isn't even that. This is forcing the artists to do it to themselves. It's not even subjecting them to it. Making them subject themselves to it.
So many of the artists, like my teacher, one of my teachers who I learned a lot from, he actually, I guess at the moment, he has some mental problem, and he always tells me that Hadia, you know, if I could talk and say what I felt, I wouldn't be a painter at all. I can't say what I think. That's why I'm a painter. So,
it is their speech, and so
I think they make us write this artistic statement and how they work, which is really.
It's Jake here again. I'm married to a philosopher who is very interested in art.
Which means it really is the artist versus the philosopher.
Yeah, well, it's never versus, but it is interesting to hear what he has to say in relation to other statements. As a trained philosopher and a professor, and he's well-recognised professor, and what he says about most modern artists. What? I'll take that up with you later. I've got a big fit, just remember that. But I just want to quote him, and that he said a couple of things that he said to me. First thing he said, looking at a lot of modern art, bad philosophy, bad art. Bad technique, no technique, they're just relying on philosophy. That's one thing. The other thing he said to me during the duration of my BBA, along with all the enormous support I had from Christine Kirkgard, who was the most generous and supportive supervisor, was, if you don't love it, nobody else will.
Sure.
And that you have to love what you do. And you have to put aside what everybody else thinks is relevant, is necessary, is modern, is fashionable, and do what you want to do and what you love.
I think that's a necessary condition, but I don't think it's completely sufficient, because I think people can love their work a lot, and
it may not make you famous.
Don't have.
Well, you're saying it's not sufficient, but not sufficient to what?
To accomplish anything other than an
You're talking about recognition.
No, I'm talking about, well, for me at least, the purpose of my art would be to express myself to other people, to communicate with other people, to improve my ability.
But that's a question, isn't it? That's a question I wanted to ask.
Then,
I think it's all express yourself thing.
It's who I was talking to.
Yeah.
I think there is so much more to it than just expressing yourself.
Absolutely.
If I wanted to express myself and just express myself, I would never have indulged in any training whatsoever, which is pretty much what goes on in our college.
Yeah, you're doing a fine job at the moment.
Don't you think that's a relevant question, is who our artists talking to?
You think I'm not expressing myself? Well, I am.
Yeah, but is there a quality of
You like it?
decision there?
I think that there's a correlation between who they're speaking to and the type of art that they produce. That's the only point.
Yes,
Yeah, because artists are all doing different so many ways, and the other they have different goals, absolutely. But those different goals do correlate with different types of art.
So what does, who are the best artists talking to?
Well, the best.
Who judges who the
The
best
ones
artist?
that are the best are the ones that are talking to me, and not just talking to
But this is the question Tommy, I wanted to ask you as well, is this idea that the artist is either talking to their work or talking to themselves or doing whatever, or talking to a viewer.
Right.
And I have a concern, as an artist, one of the issues that I've sort of worked with is exactly what Kay was talking about.
Yeah.
Right? With that idea that you have to be doing what you love. And one of our big challenges is to be able to switch off from what other people want or expect or anything like that and actually be authentic. And I think if you can be authentic about that, you can say that. And my final question would be, what if the artist is, and I mean, is dialogue the right word, I don't know, but should the artist be talking to art in terms of there's all of these paintings out there and they just strive for something that they think is excellent within that thing.
Sorry,
Okay, well,
if I could just interject for a moment.
I'm actually
Can we make this the last response?
Yeah,
and then
okay,
wrap up the
that's
evening?
fine, except that I know you have a question.
Over a glass of wine.
I actually would like to respond to this. I have data that relates to this. And my point with that.
No more.
All right.
Drag her on.
Sorry. But I want to respond to this, and that's just that. Interestingly, so even if representational artists, even if they might not be giving you what you want, interestingly, they're the only ones who talked about truth or honesty. The abstract artists never brought that up because what does it matter to be truthful when you're talking to your canvas? But representational artists, they can shock their viewers because they're still talking to their viewers. Whereas an abstract artist has kind of given up that goal because they're just talking to their canvas. Whereas a representational artist, they can be truthful and actually, and maybe in a way that the viewers don't want because they're actually still talking to viewers. So they're the only ones who use words such as truth and honesty in describing their paintings. And you can, why not, I think we have to call it a...
I
Thank you very much. Just a short break.
Hey, that was so good. You made it all talk so much. I've got two thoughts. I think
We do.